in the span of 40 years, all of those things have changed. We have better medications, we have far better psychotherapies, a far better insight into what depression is, who's vulnerable and under what conditions. But the idea at that time of even thinking about depression in terms of prevention was sheer fantasy. We didn't have good treatment, much less good opportunities for prevention. So I will summarize my response to all four of these questions. Yes, 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 and yes. What we have learned is that there are certain vulnerabilities, risk factors. A risk factor is anything that increases the likelihood of somebody suffering a particular disease or condition. And at the time that I started studying depression, we knew of exactly two risk factors, gender and family history. We now know that there are scores of risk factors, factors that increase vulnerability to depression. And I'm going to talk about some of the key ones this evening. Now, part of what came out of that initial study was the recognition that it's not just what happens to you. You know, for the people who say, well, the reason I'm depressed is because here's what happened to me when I was a kid. Or the reason that I'm depressed is because I lost my job. Or the reason I'm depressed is because this person broke up with me. That's only partially true at best. It's far less about what actually happens to you, and it's far more about how you interpret, how you give the significance to, what kind of meaning you attach to the events in your life. And part of what we've learned is that there's a phenomenon called attributional style, a pattern of how people reflexively, unconsciously, interpret the significance of events. And this is something that is imperative to appreciate for all of us, because this is where some of the strongest risk factors reside, as I'll get into in just a little while. But let's backtrack to the most basic of questions. If we ask the question, what is depression? Well, depression is technically considered a mood disorder, but it's far more than that. Depression's tentacles reach into every part of a person's life. It affects not just your mood, it affects your physiology, your physical health, and how depression serves as a risk factor for many different conditions, most notably cardiovascular disease. In fact, there are cardiologists around the world who are recommending screening for depression as the first screen for cardiovascular disease, but others as well. It reaches into your ability to think and make decisions. And it's one of the things I'm going to talk about a little bit later is the quality of people's decisions and how their way of making decisions actually unintentionally reinforces depression. It affects job performance and your ability to function in the work that you do. It affects concentration, how many work-related accidents that damage people and damage people's lives are caused by depression. It affects relationships. It's hard to be around people who are depressed. It ends up damaging relationships, and of course, what that leads to is more isolation and more depression. So I can go on and on about all the different tentacles of depression, but you should get the idea that this isn't just a bad mood. There are a lot of things that are very persistent, very enduring about the patterns that give rise to depression in the first place that affect quality of life over the span of a lifetime. So then if we come to the question, what causes depression? Is depression caused by, now look at this list. If you were to research every one of these factors, you would find that there is abundant evidence for all of them and more. And if you look at this list, you'll notice that some of these factors are biological factors. Some of these factors are psychological factors. Some of these factors are social factors. The more that we have learned about depression, the more that we learn how important the social side of the equation really is. that so many of the risk factors for depression, when I talk about depressed parenting and why kids of depressed parents are at so much higher a risk, it isn't through genetics. It's the foundation. As a parent, you can't teach kids what you don't know. And so it becomes an interesting field of research. What is the relationship between family structure, family coping styles, family atmosphere, and depression? And to leave it general for the moment, there are some very significant factors that operate in that arena. That's why I wrote the book, Depression is Contagious, because these factors now are being recognized across a variety of fields. So to summarize that point, how important it is to appreciate and have a multi-dimensional